Turn to Ecclesiastes. We're going to look at Ecclesiastes this evening. If you can't find it, you're in good company. It's a hard book to find. It's just after Proverbs in the Bibles, around the middle. Ecclesiastes chapter 1. And it's a book that really wrestles with life. And they say that preachers, we're often in books like Romans and Ephesians, but Ecclesiastes, this is where life is at. This is what you face day to day. So it's a great book for us to look at. We're going to read verses 1 to 11. Just after Proverbs. Ecclesiastes 1, verses 1 to 11. The words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south and goes around to the north. Around and around goes the wind, and on its circuits the wind returns. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they flow again. All things are full of weariness. A man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. And there is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of which it is said, "See, this is new"? It has been already in the ages before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things yet to be among those who come after. Can you believe that we are halfway through nearly 2024? As I said at the beginning, I was last here at the end of December, the end of 2023, now we're midsummer here. It's a glorious evening. It was pitch black when I was here last time, and now it's a beautiful evening. And don't you find, and the older you get, the years go faster. They go faster and faster. The children, they might think, no, it goes very slowly. I remember being at school, don't you? And the clock, it just never seemed to move. And you're waiting for those hands to move around, so it's playtime or home time. But as you get older, the years just fly by. For those of us who've had children, who have young children, will know just how quickly they go by, don't they? Just fly by. This week, the school in Rafo that my daughter will be going to in September, it was closed on Tuesday because of a funeral of a young boy, a 13-year-old boy, who died of leukemia. And I'm sure if you asked his parents, they would say it's just a breath. You know, he's been and he's gone, and it's happened so quickly. Where did those 13 years go? They've been too fast, just a breath. But whether you live 13 years or 113 years, it's still but a breath, isn't it? It still goes too quickly. The author Terry Pratchett writes, inside every old person is a young person wondering, what happened? Where did it all go? What's happened? And when we realise that life is just vanishing like that, what should we do? What should we do? Some try and cram in every experience they can. I've got to make the most of this. I've got to do my bucket list. I've got to do everything. Others maybe try and escape through something, whether it's alcohol or drugs or something, to just escape. Others try and make a name for themselves. Others think, well, I'll make some discovery that people will remember me for. And maybe others despair. Well, the book of Ecclesiastes helps us with this kind of struggle of life just flying by too fast, this sense of life vanishing. And what is it all about? What do we gain? It's written to answer the question there, the key question, I think, in Ecclesiastes in verse 3. Do you see chapter 1 and verse 3? What does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? How would you answer that question? What gain is there in life from all your hard work, all your toil? What gain is there? Well, we're going to join the preacher to discover what he says. Who is the preacher? Well, we're told in verse 1 the words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Who is the preacher? He's the son of David, so he's probably Solomon, a king over Jerusalem. It could have been a later king, but probably it's Solomon. And he's described, I don't know if you've got the little footnote there, I've got a little footnote from the word preacher that tells us he's convener or collector, so he's the one that gathers God's people together. And it's why this book is called Ecclesiastes, because of the Greek ecclesia, meaning gathering, church, the gathering of God's people. So he's gathered the people together. So it's a Christian book. It's a book for worship. It's a book for us to gather together to hear what God has to say to people who are confused by life, to people who find that life is just flying by and wondering, what is it all about? So the author is Solomon, but of course the author is also God. As with all scripture, it's breathed out by God, and so this is God's word to us. God is speaking to people searching for meaning. That's something to listen to, isn't it? God, who knows the end from the beginning, through this preacher, is going to reveal what life is all about, what the purpose is. And at first we may think, well, there's no purpose. The preacher's first words in our translation, if you've got the ESV, vanity of vanities. It's not much better in the NIV, meaningless, everything's meaningless. What is it? Well, he can't be saying that everything's vanity and meaningless, because actually, in the book, he does say some things are better than others. So if you turn over the page to chapter 3 and verse 12, he tells us, and so there must be meaning, because he says in chapter 3 verse 12, I perceive there's nothing better. Here's something that's better, here's something with meaning. Nothing better for them than to be joyful and to do good as long as they live. There is some meaning here. There is some hope. And actually, if we read on to the end of the book, it's always good to go to the end of a book to see what it's all about. And we see at the end of the book, he tells us, chapter 12, verse 13, a little sneak peek to the end of the book. Chapter 12, verse 13. The end of the matter, all has been heard. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment with every secret thing, whether good or evil. There is purpose. It's not meaningless, because we're heading somewhere. We're heading for judgment. And actually that's a good thing. Sometimes people think judgment's a bad thing, but judgment's a good thing. It means everything you do is significant, is valuable. It's not meaningless. So he can't be saying meaningless. I don't think he's saying vanity. What is the word that he's using here? Well, again, come back to chapter 1, and you might see that little footnote there at the bottom. It tells us what the Hebrew is. And now I'm not very good at Hebrew. It's something I still would like to learn more of, but I think it's pronounced hevel, this word that we've got translated as vanity. And the little footnote tells us it's like a mist or a vapor. It's hard to imagine on a day like this, a clear day, isn't it? But you know those days where you probably get a few of them down here in Fermanagh, where it's misty, where it's cold in the morning and the mist is there, but it vanishes quickly. Or vapor, or mere breath. Think of a cold morning and you breathe out and you can see the breath, but it's gone in a moment. So actually a better translation would probably be breath of breath. Breath of breath. All his breath is so short, isn't it? Life is just so short. It's like a breath. If we were to light a candle and to blow it out, you'd see the smoke for a short time. Maybe 10 seconds, and then it would be gone. What about if you tried to grab hold of some of that smoke and put it in your pocket? Would you be able to do that? Of course not. In fact, the more you try and grab hold of it, the more that smoke would vanish as you tried to grab hold of it. And the preacher is saying, well, life isn't only short, breath, but it's also elusive. It's hard to grab hold of. And if you try and grab hold of it for meaning, you'll find it vanishes all the more. If you try and find meaning in the things God has given you, you'll find it just vanishes all the more. But it doesn't stop us trying, does it? Perhaps we think, well, if I could just get those exam results, if I could just get onto that course, if I could just get that car, if I could just get married, if we could just have children, if we could just get the children out of the nappy stage, if they could just grow up a little bit more, it would just be a little bit easier for us. If we could just have a bit more money, if I could just get that promotion, well, then everything would be all right. But the preacher wakes us up. He says his question, verse 3, what does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? And in this book, Solomon the preacher is going to explain how he tried to grab hold of meaning in wisdom, and how he tried to grab hold and make sense and get gain and get ahead in pleasure, and how he tried in work. But it eluded him. The more he tried to grab onto him, the more it vanished. It's a bit like building sandcastles at the beach, isn't it? It'd be a great day to do that today, a beautiful sunny day. You build the sandcastles and you work away and you build this amazing set of castles. Maybe you've got a little stream going down to the sea, so you're hopeful that the sea might come up this, and you're really proud of it. But what would happen if you went back the next day? It would all be gone, wouldn't it? There'd be no trace. The tide would have flattened it. And isn't that what life is like? Build and build and build, and then it's just gone. As we sang in Psalm 103, words that I've often read at a graveside. As for man, he flourishes like the flower of the field, but the wind blows over and it's gone. It's just gone so quickly. We will remember our loved ones for a lifetime, but in 100 years, who will remember you? Who will remember me? No one. Will be gone. Of course, not people like John Lennon, we might think. John Lennon, do you remember? He said, and the children probably don't know who he is, but John Lennon, he said that the Beatles will be more famous than Jesus. Jesus and Christianity will die out, but John Lennon and the Beatles, well, they'll be more successful. Well, where is he now? Today's celebrities are tomorrow's death notices. We don't like to think about that, do we? So we play a game. We play let's pretend. Let's pretend that actually we're in control. Let's pretend that we can make a lasting difference. I think the children are told this at school, aren't they? Let's pretend that if we can get that promotion, if we could get the building sorted out here, if we could just get the church to grow, we'll be all right. If my health could just be a bit better, if my son wasn't unwell with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, then life would be a lot better. And the preacher wakes us up and he says, verse 3, what does a man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? Under the sun there means life in this fallen world, life as it is now. What is the answer to that question? Well, the rest of the book is going to wrestle with that question, but tonight I want us to see three things: an answer from nature, an answer from experience, and an answer from Jesus. So let's see first of all his answer from nature, and this is verses 4 to 7. Let's have a look again at verses 4 to 7. A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south and goes around to the north. Around and around goes the wind, and on its circuits the wind returns. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they flow again. Generations come and go. Think back to all the generations that have been before you. How far can you remember back? I don't think I can go past my grandfather. You might be able to go a bit further than that, but can you really remember past a great-grandparent? Maybe you've done a bit of tracing of the family tree, but he's saying, look, we come and we go. And here's the shock, isn't it? Because a generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. A man and woman, we were made to rule over the earth. But we're the ones that crumble and go back to the earth, and the earth remains. It manages to get on all right without us. It's quite humbling, isn't it? And freeing. It doesn't depend on us. The earth will be able to carry on even when you and I are gone. The earth remains. What about the sun? Verse 5, the sun rises, the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it rises. It's an endless cycle, isn't it? But what does it gain? What about the wind? The wind is surely so busy. Surely it achieves something when it knocks the odd tree down, doesn't it? It looks like it's getting somewhere. The wind blows to the south and goes round and around to the north. Around and around goes the wind, and on its circuit the wind returns. It doesn't get anywhere, does it? What gain does it have, he says. What about the rivers and the streams? Surely they get somewhere, don't they? All streams run to the sea. The sea's not full. The place where the streams flow, there they flow again. There's the River Erne, and I discovered it's the second longest river in Ulster. You can make the name for something of anything if you narrow it down enough, can't you? It's the second biggest river, second longest river in Ulster, the River Erne. Well, isn't it busy? Taking all that water down, and as it's there all day long, so busy. The water's flowing, so busy it goes and it thinks, oh, all this water I'm carrying, I'm going to fill the Atlantic today. Is the Atlantic any fuller at the end of the day? No. Well, you and I know, and so did the writers of the wisdom literature, they knew about the water cycle. But to the eye, where does it go? What gain is there from all its hard work? Well, the preacher says, look at nature. Look at all the busyness of nature. Is there any gain? What makes you think you can gain if the world doesn't? Well, does that leave you a bit depressed this evening? There's not much gain? That's not his aim, actually. A number of times the preacher is leading us to joy and to meaning, but he wants us to just experience this sense of frustration. He wants us to understand that there's not much gain in this life. What about experience? Verses 8 to 11. All things are full of weariness. A man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. And there's nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of which it is said, see, this is new? It has been already in the ages before us. There's no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things yet to be among those who come after. All things are full of weariness. Does that not describe your experience of school or of work? It's weary, isn't it? It's hard. We were talking about sunburn earlier. You know, as you're out working in the sun, it's wearisome. Why is it that a job that you think will take 5 minutes ends up taking 5 hours? And I know I'm not the best at DIY, but it always seems to take longer. You think, oh, it won't take long to put up that shelf. 5 hours later. It won't take long to take down that fence. Even longer. Why is it? Why is it so wearisome? I was filling out my Garda vetting. So in the south we do Garda vetting. I think you have something similar here in the north. For if you want to do youth work, you have to be Garda vetted. And I was filling out my form, and I've moved quite a lot, so I had a lot of addresses to fill out on this form, and I went off to go and do something else, came back, and it kindly let me carry on, and I carried on filling out all my addresses, page after page after page, and it let me click next, so I thought it must be alright going through, and I got to the end after I typed in everything. Your session is timed out. We haven't saved any of your information. All is weariness, I thought, isn't it? It's tiresome. Why couldn't they have told me that before, as I was clicking anyway? Wearisome, isn't it? That's the experience of life. When I was working on Ecclesiastes, I remembered that my wife had asked me to phone the doctor to cancel a blood test for my son because he had another appointment. And I went to phone, and the landline wasn't working, so I had to phone Vodafone to try and get them to sort out. I had to phone them from my mobile, to get them to try and sort it out. I had a text come through on my phone while I was on the phone about the insurance on the van. Someone wanted to borrow the van, and that led me down another warren hole. It's wearisome, isn't it? My son has a condition called Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and he's getting weaker rather than stronger, and it's wearisome. Every day is wearisome. He wakes up in the night needing to be lifted back up the bed because he's slipped down the bed. It's wearisome as we care for him. That family who just lost the child to leukemia, isn't life wearisome? Why is it so wearisome? Well, we're given a clue actually in verse 3, and that key question for Ecclesiastes: what does man gain by all the toil which he toils under the sun? Because the word for man there is Adam. So here we're reminded of the fall of Adam and Eve, and the word toil reminds us of the curse, the fall. Remember what happened? He was told, by the sweat of your brow you will eat. It's going to be hard because we're living in a fallen world. The life under the sun is this world. It's this fallen world. And so the writer to the Ecclesiastes, whether you're a Christian or not, he says, look, it's going to be hard. It's wearisome. Don't be surprised that it is wearisome. That's helpful to know, so we have a right expectation of life. It's going to be hard to gain. It's wearisome. It's not just wearisome, he says in verse 9, it's repetitive. What has been, what will be. And what has been done is what will be done. I saw a man out cutting the grass last week, and it looked really well after he'd done it, and I'm sure he was very delighted with his work. But what's going to happen? It'll grow. He'll have to do it all over again. How many times do you have to clean your teeth before they're clean? You have to do it every day, don't you? We have this cycle, and you get up, perhaps you get washed, you get dressed, you have some breakfast, you go to work, you come home, you eat your dinner, you go to bed, and it's repeat, isn't it? Round and around we go, round and around. Even our senses are not satisfied. He says in verse 8, all things are full of weariness, a man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. And so we long for something new, something to break the cycle. But he says, verse 10, is there anything of which it said, see, this is new? It has been already in the ages before us. Is there anything new? We looked at this in family worship, and my daughter said, well, the air fryer. What about the air fryer? That's new, isn't it? Well, no, it's not. It's just a different form of cooking, isn't it? It's been before. We've been cooking for years. What about the mobile phone? That's new, isn't it? Well, it's just a different form of talking to people, different form of communication. What about going to the moon? That's new, isn't it? Well, no, it's just a different form of exploring. We've been exploring the planet. Now we're off into space. It's not new. It's just a different form of what has been before. Round and around we go. It's the same truth, isn't it? If you're lazy, you'll not have very much. If you work hard, you might get a bit of a profit, but then you'll die. And what will happen? You work your socks off and you die, and the earth carries on just fine without you. And the question is, how can we live wisely if this is happening? When we consider that our life is like the smoke of a candle, or like your breath on a cold morning, how can we not despair? How can we not just try and grab all we can and try and fit in as much as we can? What is the answer to verse 3? What does a man gain by all the toil which he toils under the sun? Well, I think the answer in Ecclesiastes is not much. But the beauty of the book is teaching you and I to be content with that. To, rather than look for meaning in it, to receive all of life as a gift. Because when you receive it as a gift, you can enjoy it. But when you try and find meaning in the individual things, you'll find that they won't give any meaning. But if you can receive it as a gift from God, you'll find you can have joy and meaning. You see, if you were to build the sandcastles on the beach and to think you're really getting somewhere, you'd be pretty depressed, wouldn't you? But if you were to go to the beach and just enjoy the fact that you could build the sandcastles, enjoy it as a gift from God, and knew that they were going to be gone tomorrow, but just enjoy it as a gift from God, you could enjoy it. And that is the secret, to receive everything as a gift. That's what he does. So just to have a look at that, just turn over to chapter 2 and verse 24. Verse 24 and 25. He says, "There is nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil." So it's good to enjoy your food. Some of us need to slow down when we're eating. I tend to see food as fuel and shovel in as much as I can to get the energy I need to then move on to the next thing. He says, no, stop and enjoy it. It's a gift from God. He's given you taste buds so you can enjoy what you're eating. Find enjoyment in your toil. There is good to come from work. Just don't look for ultimate meaning in it. "This also I saw is from the hand of God, for apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment?" Or turn on to chapter 9 and verse 7. Chapter 9 and verse 7. "Go eat your bread with joy and drink wine with a merry heart, for God has already approved what you do. Let your garments be always white. Let not oil be lacking on your head. Enjoy life with the wife whom you love, all the days of your vain or breath life, your short life, that he's given you under the sun. Because that is your portion in life, and in your toil, at which you toil under the sun." You see, he says, look, enjoy what God gives you as a gift. Just don't try and find meaning in the individual things, but enjoy them as a gift. And you will find meaning, because this expression, under the sun, means that there is something beyond the sun. There is an eternity that will make sense of everything. You see, as we've already seen at the end of the book, we are heading somewhere. We are heading to judgment. And that will make sense of everything. Because for those who belong to Christ, every wrong will be made right. There'll be a new creation. There'll be no more leukemia or Duchenne muscular dystrophy, or whatever else that is so wearisome for us now. Let's look to, lastly, the answer from Jesus. And here I'd like us to turn on to Mark chapter 7, if we can. Mark chapter 7, and verses 31 to 37. Mark 7, verse 31. And we're told, "Then Jesus returned from the region of Tyre and went through Sidon to the Sea of Galilee in the region of the Decapolis. And they brought to him a man who was deaf and had a speech impediment, and they begged him to lay his hand on him. And taking him aside from the crowd privately, he put his fingers into his ears, and after spitting, touched his tongue. And looking up to heaven, he sighed and said to him, 'Ephphatha,' that is, be opened. And his ears were opened, his tongue was released, and he spoke plainly. And Jesus charged them to tell no one. But the more he charged them, the more zealously they proclaimed it. And they were astonished beyond measure, saying, 'He has done all things well. He even makes the deaf hear and the mute speak.'" Here is a time that the Lord Jesus Christ experienced, one of the many times that Jesus experienced the frustration, the weariness, the wearisomeness of life. He meets a man who is deaf. And surely it's harder for a man who's deaf to get ahead in life. Hard, he can't hear what's going on, he could hardly speak. And he had some friends who brought him to Jesus. And notice it would be easy to miss this. Notice what Jesus did before he healed him. Do you see in verse 34? Looking up to heaven, he sighed. Why did he sigh? The word is the same as our word for groaning. Why is it Jesus groaned? He sighed. Well, he was showing the people there, he's showing us today through his word that he gets it. He understands the weariness that you and I face. He's not a distant God. He's a God who understands, who's come near. And he sighed as he experienced this frustration. He sighed on behalf of the man who's had a lifetime of not being able to hear. And it wasn't meant to be this way. He sighs, he groans. And it's the same word that's used in Romans 8 for the whole of creation, groaning, longing for that day that Jesus comes back to put everything right. Jesus sighed because he's longing for that day when he's going to put everything right again. It's the same word that's used in 2 Corinthians chapter 5 to describe our experience in this life, where the apostle says, while we wait for that day, we groan, longing to be clothed. We groan because we're not there yet. And so Jesus, by sighing, he shows us he understands. He gets it. But not only that, because it's great that he understands, but isn't it even better to see what he does next? He gives us a foretaste, a thumbnail sketch of the kingdom of God, how good it will be when he returns and there's no more sickness, no more deafness. You see, what happens? He opens the man's ears so he can hear again. And what do they say? Do you see what they say about him at the end of that verse 37? He's done all things well. Which is very similar to the book of Genesis, when God makes everything and it was good and it was very good. He made everything well. And here is Jesus remaking everything. It's what he's going to do when he returns. You see, one day, because of Jesus' truly meaningful and truly new work, his sacrifice on the cross for your sin and for mine, for every time we've rejected God as our loving ruler, Jesus' work is truly new. There has been no work like that ever before or since. His truly new work of dying and rising again, when he died on the cross, he said, it is finished. It was done. The job was done. The end of weariness. Because of Jesus' work on the cross, there is something truly new coming. The new heaven and the new earth. Something truly new. Truly wonderful, with resurrection bodies. But until that day, you and I will groan, and it will be wearisome. And so the book of Ecclesiastes is trying to teach us to be content with the fact that it will be wearisome, that we won't get a huge amount out of this life, but to enjoy what we do have, and to look forward to that day when Jesus returns. To enjoy life as a gift. And you see, as we do that, we'll find joy in what he gives us. It puts food back to being food again. We're not going to try and find our ultimate meaning in it. It allows us to be friends and to enjoy people and family and fun, but to enjoy them in their right place. To recognise it all comes from God. We'll see that although life is repetitive and wearisome, we are heading somewhere. We're heading to judgment. Which means everything is significant. Everything you do matters. Remember that parable Jesus told of the sheep and the goats? He says on that last day when he returns, he'll divide the people into two groups, the sheep and the goats. And those that have rejected Jesus as their ruler, who've not done anything for Jesus because they just did not care that he died for them, they will be thrown into hell. But for those who have turned to Jesus and said, yes, I want you to be my Saviour, my Lord, my King, and the way that I now live my life shows that by caring for one another, he says they'll be rewarded. You'll be rewarded for what you've done for other people, the people you've prayed for, the people you've helped, the people you've shared your life with. You've done that for Jesus. How does that transform something as dull as Garda vetting? Because I think it does. I found, I was preparing this as I had to go back and do the Garda vetting again, and I thought to myself, well actually I'm doing this for Jesus. That is the reason I'm doing this Garda vetting. I wouldn't be doing it otherwise. I'm doing this because I want to serve Jesus. And it still was frustrating, but it gave me a sense of meaning as to why I was doing it. A sense of purpose. To see that I'm doing it for Jesus, and to look forward to the day when there will one day be no more admin, no more frustration. So do you see how we need this book of Ecclesiastes? It's so easy to either get so busy and to think, well, if I can just get this thing done, if I can just get that, well, then I'll get ahead. And there are writers who say, no, wake up, look at the world around you, look at nature, look at experience, look what happens. Stop trying to gain. Start enjoying life as a gift from God. And use your life to serve King Jesus, because that is what really matters. And secondly, when life is hard and burdensome, we'll not be surprised, will we? Because we know that this is a fallen world, we're living under the sun, it is broken. And so this book of Ecclesiastes prepares us to live wisely while we wait. Well, where is it that you're trying to get ahead? What are the projects you're thinking about? And it's not to say don't work at them, don't do them, but just don't look for ultimate meaning there. Where is it that you're struggling with weariness? Can you hear this evening Jesus groaning with you, sighing with you, alongside you, and looking forward to that day when he will make all things new?